Thank you for joining us.
No, it's my pleasure.
I just thought we'll start off with a broad brush view of IIT of today. Many alumni don't realize the magnitude of the changes that have come about.
So the IIT of today is typically about 4 times the size in terms of number of students of the IIT of 1980s, 1980-85, that period. But 10,000 students now, and faculty size also is not, it's not 4 times, but it's more like about 2.5 times. And because the bulk of the increase, significant part of the increase in students is, while the undergraduate student population has gone up by about 3 times, from about 250, 300 to about 800 now, and it will go a little further in the next few years because of the new increase in intake. But half the campus student population is now comprises of research scholars, PhD students and some master students. So that's a very different mix from what it was in the 80s, and therefore you don't have the same proportionate faculty increase. Every faculty member now has a group size, a research scholar group size of about 5 or 6, which is very different from our times, from those times when we were students. That is one major change. The other change, of course, is that the infrastructure has grown to keep up with this growth. Both hostels, we now have 20 hostels, each hostel typically accommodating about 400 students on average. We have our women fraction, though we are not happy with it, is at close to about 17-18%. We wanted to go up further, and but therefore we have now 4 women's hostels, and we are expanding further. Because of the intensity of research now, the research infrastructure has grown tremendously. A lot of centers, a lot of equipment, a lot of labs which are running 24 hours, a lot of sophisticated labs, and therefore we've added new buildings. In fact, the one you see at the side here, behind by the side of us, is the latest big building to have been added. After the first 4 big buildings that were built when the institute was started, ESB, MSB, HSB and BSB, we added a number of other small specialized buildings, but the first really next big building is this one, and we're going to build one more like this in the next 2 years. So these are all the big things that will hit you if you come and visit the campus. However, what you will notice is that all this has been done without changing the basic structure of the campus, the greenery and the way the layout is done. There are lots of trees everywhere. These buildings.
Here, this is an example, that banyan tree is an example of how.
In fact, this building itself, the architect was given the charter that he must design this building for our needs, but starting with the Google map, which has all the trees which cannot be cut. So that's why you'll notice that this building has a very peculiar, interesting trapezoidal shape, because there were these big banyan trees which couldn't be cut. And so this is the way we do it, and this is the way actually the first director, Professor Sengupta, also located the buildings. So it's that feature hasn't changed. We have by and large not cut significant trees, and in fact the tree cover from the 60s to now has only increased significantly. So if you come into the campus, your initial reaction might be that it's not very different. There's a gate, and then you see a lot of trees on both sides, and you see deer, and that way it hasn't changed. But then if you look carefully, you will find that there are many more buildings, and they are bigger buildings. These new buildings are all multi-story buildings, all going up to 7 floors, and so on. The other thing that's happened just off campus, but it's almost part of the campus, is the research park, which is almost a third or half the size of the academic zone of IIT Madras, and it has so many companies and all our startups, and it's connected very nicely through a bridge. So it's also part of the campus, and that's of course unique in the country. And
Sure. So in the face of these non-incremental changes that you described, there are some things that have remained constant. We still get the best students in every degree program. Tell us a little bit about how we've been able to manage that.
Well, I think the IIT still attract still the craze for the youngsters of the country, still attract the best students. So the older IITs still continue to attract the top rankers in the country, the undergraduate level. But even at the one of the things we have done is to pump up the quality of the intake at the research level, is to actually encourage people, bright students, to join our research program at the master's level itself. That means we actually look out for bright students like the American universities do, who have finished their undergraduate and who are possibly looking at a research career, and we recruit them into a program that will give them a master's and PhD. If they change their mind for some reason, they can get out of their masters, so we don't stop it. And that program brings in about 100 to 150, and then some of our master students come in here and then discover the joys of research and upgrade. So between these two, about 150 students a year, really high quality students, are upgrading to the PhD program, and that's are joining the PhD program at the end after they're finishing their undergraduate, and that's been a very important intake as far as the research program is concerned.
Sure. And you talked about 4 to 5 research scholars per faculty member, and PhD research scholars
these
per
are
faculty
PhDs.
member.
These are PhD
And these are world-class numbers by any stretch of imagination.
So in terms of the the critical mass, and in terms of what you need to have research output coming in a flow and with steadily improving parameters in terms of the work quality of the research, you need this kind of a thing. Earlier we always did good research. We must not forget some of our pioneers in the institute who did fantastic research with very little in the 70s and 80s. But one of the things that hampered them was that typically they would be a group of 1 or 2, and every time they graduate one student to start again, it's like starting a new startup. There is no continuity, and that used to hamper the faculty, the best faculty at that time, quite a bit, and that has changed now. And of course, the resources needed for doing this kind of research are enormous, and we are fortunate the government has had this program of growing research in this fashion in the country. Of course, it's never enough, so we're always struggling, but it's a very important part of the new IIT, the research focus.
And this growth that you described has been actually a planned phase. You started out a strategic planning process early in 2012, that you released the strategic plan in 14, and this last 5 years has been kind of a well chalked out implementation with some distractions coming from other government sources, their needs. How is that process?
Unlike companies and particularly startups, I think education institutions have a great inertia. It's not easy to turn them or move them fast. It takes time to build up a research base. It takes time to recruit. Even an individual research scholar lasts 5 years in an institution, and to grow the numbers, and if you want to change your focus, it takes time. So you have to do this in a planned fashion. It's not possible to say, okay, the next 2 years we will change our research profile. It doesn't happen that way. You recruit people. When you recruit people, you're recruiting them for 35 years, so you got to sort of see where you want to go. And so we've been at this, IIT Madras has been approaching this in a planned fashion both from about late 90s, but particularly from 2002, that period, to now. We had one decadal plan which we completed in 2010 or 11, then the second decadal plan is almost getting done now, where we have a clear plan of how many faculty we're going to add in that period, how to do that, how are you going to go the research, what is the kind of level of funding we're going to target, what is the kind of research outcomes we were looking for, because the IITs in India are in a role where we are not just doing academic research, but we're also playing a role in the national, meeting the national challenges, whether it's water, energy, etc., etc. We are also part of this huge online education program of the government. So there are many other roles that we play, which we have to factor in. And faculty here are wearing many hats. We let them choose their hats, but most faculty are wearing 2 or 3 hats, and we have to make sure that all of this sort of goes in. And our undergraduate program is a very important program. We have to make sure that keeps on growing in strength and changing to the needs of the times. So our curriculum revisions and all of that. So if you look at our strategic plan on the website, you'll find 7 or 8 pillars on which it is situated, ranging from curriculum to research to funded research, industry collaboration, international relations, and entrepreneurship now. This is a very important part. So all the student welfare, because student life is also changing dramatically. Kids now come from, by and large, from nuclear families after having been single-mindedly focused on studies for 3 or 4 years. Some of their opening out, some of their flowering out, some of their discovering of their personalities and all that now happens significantly at IIT, and we need to provide the opportunities for that. So students are spending much more time in the hostels than in the department. So we have to make sure that that time is valuable, turns out to be a very important, well spent time from their point of view. So all of this has to be taken care of, and that's what you will see in our strategic plan.